We're going to do our introduction of elected officials today a little bit different than normal. We are going to ask all of the elected officials to please stand up, and then Derek is going to go around with a microphone and ask you to introduce yourself and what your position is. In deference to everybody here, please don't filibuster. Just introduce yourself and we will move on. Otherwise, we could be here till noon. So, would all the elected officials please stand, and Derek, you're on your own. Where are you, Derek? There he is.
I'm Marion Cooksey, District 39, State Representative.
Thank you. Joe Dorman, State Representative, House District 65.
Representing Guy Lieben, House District 82.
Willa Johnson, Oklahoma County, District 1.
Jason Nelson, State Representative, District 87 in Northwest Oklahoma City, which is right across the street.
Greg Treat, State Senate, Senate District 47.
Gary Bands, House District 101, which is southeast Oklahoma City and most of Pete White's Ward 4 area.
Thank you, Derek. Meg Salyer, City of Oklahoma City, Ward 6.
David Holt, State Senate, District 30.
Brian Mon, County Commissioner, District 2, Oklahoma County.
David Dank, House District 85, and also a chamber member.
No speeches. Richard Morissette, House District 92, South Oklahoma City.
Steve Russell, State Senate, South Oklahoma City, Mustang and Moore.
State Representative Randy Graw, representing District 81, Edmond, North Oklahoma City.
Larry McAtee, Oklahoma City Council, Ward 3.
State Representative Harold Wright, Weatherford and Clinton, but I have a far western part of Oklahoma City, my district.
Dana Murphy, Chair, Oklahoma Corporation Commission.
Carolyn Caudell, Oklahoma County Clerk.
Gary Jones, State Auditor.
Elise Hall, State Representative, House District 100.
John Wetzel, Oklahoma County Sheriff.
David Prater, Oklahoma County DA.
Leonard Sullivan, Oklahoma County Assessor.
Good morning. Randy McDaniel, Oklahoma State House, District 83.
Clark Jolly, Oklahoma State Senate, District 41, Edmond.
Last and least, no. Ray Vaughn, Oklahoma County Commissioner, District 3.
Janet Barisi, Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Todd Lamb, Lieutenant Governor.
Sean Burrage, State Senator, Claremore, Rogers, Mays County.
Scott Inman, State House, District 94, Del City and South Oklahoma City.
Kris Steele, State House, District 26, which is primarily Shawnee.
Brian Bingman, State Senate, District 12.
Don Barrington, State Senate, District 31.
Gary Mars, Oklahoma City City Council, Ward 1.
Thank you all for being here. During the 2011 legislative session, a number of key chamber priorities were enacted. Success in these areas will propel our region and the economy forward as the business climate continues to strengthen in the greater Oklahoma City area. I would like to take a moment to express our sincere appreciation to Governor Fallon and the members of our legislature for your excellent work last session on issues that will keep Oklahoma moving forward. We look forward to continuing this progress in 2012. I would like to mention a few of the key legislative actions taken during 2011. The passage of a comprehensive lawsuit reform legislation has been a long-standing priority for our chamber. In 2011, the legislature passed and the governor signed major lawsuit reform legislation. Two of the most significant components were a hard cap of $350,000 on non-economic damages and the elimination of joint and several liability. The need for significant workers' compensation reform has long been evident as Oklahoma employers currently pay the fourth highest workers' compensation rates in the country. Last year, legislation representing the first total rewrite of Oklahoma's workers' compensation law in 33 years was passed by the legislature. Also important to the Oklahoma City business community and the state was the passage of provider fee legislation that will stabilize the finances of Oklahoma's hospitals, keep doctors from leaving the state, and ensure that quality health care is provided to more Oklahomans. Of equal importance was the legislature's refraining from passing harsh immigration law that would have had a devastating impact on Oklahoma's economy and our state's image as a place that is welcoming towards business. 2011 was also an important year for education reform, including the elimination of trial de novo, a process that previously made it difficult and expensive to remove bad teachers as well as those who had engaged in illegal or inappropriate behavior. Another advance was legislation to improve transparency of schools. The new legislation will require all schools to be graded on an A through F system instead of the current 0 through 1,500 rating scale, making it easier for parents to determine how schools are performing. We also saw an increase in opportunities for school choice with reforms to create innovative solutions to charter school infrastructure funding obstacles. Part of the Chamber's work to strengthen the voice of Oklahoma business community is accomplished through the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber Political Action Committee. The PAC was created in 2010 and made contributions to 22 candidates, 21 of which were elected to office. With another election year on our hands, we will continue to grow the PAC and support candidates who support Oklahoma City's key business issues. If anyone would like to contribute to the PAC, there is information at your seat today. While 2011 was certainly one of the most productive sessions in our state's history, our work is never finished. Our city and region have seen significant progress over the past several years. We must continue to send a clear message to businesses inside and outside of the state that Oklahoma is creating the very best business environment in the nation. By working together, we will carry our strong momentum into the future. We are eager to work with all of you to seize the opportunity before us to realize Oklahoma's full potential. I would now like to introduce Brad Krieger, who currently serves as Executive Vice President and Regional Manager for Oklahoma and Kansas for RVS Bank, and also as Vice Chairman of Government Relations for the Chamber. He will moderate our legislative panel today. Let's welcome Brad Krieger.
I'd like to echo Carl's comments about welcoming having you here today. And as I look out here, this is one of those breakfasts that just continues to grow, which is, it shows really the support of the business community, legislature, and certainly the chamber, and certainly one of the reasons that not only the state is doing well, but also Oklahoma City. Carl mentioned, at your desk or at your table, you've got the Chamber's 2012 Legislative Guide. And in this guide, you'll find the legislative agenda. You'll find numbers for the legislative directory, and which will help you in contacting some of these elected officials. Let me touch on just a couple of our priorities right now. During the last session, we were successful in protecting some of the economic incentive programs. And the Chamber's identified a list of programs and tax credit programs that are essential to the economic development of the state. And you've already seen how some of these programs have been beneficial in attracting business to Oklahoma and Oklahoma City. The Chamber's committed to working with the legislature to retain some of these programs and make sure that everyone's educated as far as the benefits and the reason why those are essential. We're also going to work with the legislation to create a health insurance marketplace for Oklahoma. We believe that it's important that we take this opportunity to control our own destiny as opposed to wait for a federal mandate for health insurance, a health insurance exchange in Oklahoma. We also believe that it is paramount that we have a strong and efficient transportation system, and it's essential to economic development. And we're committed to preserving ODOT's 8-year construction work plan. This is probably the first time that all of our roads and bridge priorities for this area are included in the 8-year plan. And we'd like to thank Secretary Ridley and ODOT for all the work that they do here in Oklahoma. An exciting development certainly has been the progress towards completing the I-40 crosstown. The Chamber's committed to seeing that the I-40 crosstown project remains fully funded and on schedule, including the tear down of the existing elevated portion of I-40 mainline and the completion of the downtown boulevard. An additional benefit of this is going to end up being, the steel beams of the bridge are going to end up being utilized to help repair some of the bridges across the state. The Chamber's also committed to improving our schools and the quality of our teachers. This is definitely one of a very strong economic development criteria, and we seek to continue with some of the reforms that in those areas. We want to increase the amount of school choice, improve transparency, and increase construction time, and it's essentially improving the performance of our schools. As I mentioned, these are just a few of the priorities that we have for 2012. Last year, Carl mentioned that 2011 was really almost a watershed year in a lot of the priorities that we got done. 2012 is just as important, and it really takes everybody in this room and all of your associates to make that possible. So I hope to take you, and again, you have the legislative guide. Please take the time to take a look at that. There's other priorities, but I just touched on a few of them. I would like to call our panel members up right now. And while they're coming up, joining me are our 4 leaders of our legislature. And we're fortunate to have the opportunity to address some of the important agenda issues facing the state and the community. After I introduce each of them, I will ask a series of questions regarding legislation in the upcoming session. Please help me welcome our panel members and show our thanks to them for joining us this morning. And I'm hoping that we will have not only a spirited, but also an insightful discussion. Let me first of all start with Senator Brian Bingman. Senator Bingman was born in Tulsa. He holds a BA from Petroleum Land Management from the University of Oklahoma. He's currently employed by Upland Resources, Inc. in Tulsa as Vice President of Land and Operations. Senator Bingman served as mayor of Sapulpa from 1992 to 2004 and served in the House of Representatives from 2004 to 2006. He was elected to the State Senate in November of 2006, and last November was elected to serve as President Pro Tem of the Oklahoma Senate. Brian Bingman. Representative Kris Steele is a native Oklahoman and was born in Ardmore. He attended Broken Bow High School and received his bachelor's in religion from Oklahoma Baptist University in 1996. He later received a master's of education in school counseling from East Central University. Representative Steele has served in the legislature for 10 years and also serves as an associate minister at Wesley United Methodist Church in Shawnee. Representative Steele is currently serving as Speaker of the Oklahoma House of Representatives. Representative Steele. Representative Scott Inman was first elected to the Oklahoma House of Representatives in November 2006 and currently serving in his third term. Representative Inman was born in Del City and attended the University of Oklahoma, where he graduated in 2001 with a degree in political science. He also attended the University of Oklahoma School of Law, where he received his Juris Doctorate in 2004. He has been elected to serve as leader of the House Democratic Caucus. Representative Inman. Senator Sean Burrage was born in Durant and lives with his wife and children in Claremore. He graduated from Antlers High School and earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Oklahoma in 1990. I'm with a bunch of kids. I mean, it's educated kids, you know. Senator Burrage obtained his Juris Doctorate from the University of Oklahoma School of Law in 1993. Senator Burrage previously served as legislative director to the United States Senator David Bourne in Washington, D.C. Last November, he was elected Democratic leader after serving as assistant Democratic leader. Senator Burrage. We've got a series of questions, and our members will have 2 minutes or less to respond to each of those questions. And yes and no is not an appropriate answer. So we'll cover a number of topics. The panelists will respond to the questions in the same order that I read their names. And each subsequent question, I will go to the next panel member and all the way on through. At a minute and a half, the Chamber's Vice President of Economic or Government Relations and Policy, Mark Van Landingham, will raise his hand and to let them know that they've got 30 seconds to finish their answer. So the order that we will go in is Senator Bingman, Representative Steele, Representative Inman, Senator Burrage. So the first question we have is, Governor Fallin has expressed a desire for Oklahoma to eliminate state income tax over a period of time. However, there are some concerns being raised regarding the impact of that as far as lost revenue would have in the state budget and core functions of the government. Do you believe that Oklahoma should significantly reduce or eliminate the state income tax? And we will start with Senator Bingman.
Thank you. Let's just throw that fireball out there and let's just let's eliminate the income tax. And I think people don't like to pay taxes, so that'd be very, very bold to do. But realistically, I think the last couple of years we worked very hard to ratchet down the income tax, and I still think that it is important that we look at how we can reduce it. We want to be competitive with our neighbors out there. We're competing with Texas with no income tax. We've got, looking at our sales tax and tax credits. I think we've got 2 task forces that have issued reports out there that we're going to look at. But we need to look at this, very thoughtfully and we're going to have a very lively discussion on it, but I think at the end of the day, if our revenue picture is good, we've got to have a balanced budget. But I think, you've seen legislation that's been filed out there, anywhere from, eliminating the income tax to, rationing it down a little bit at a time. So probably going to see some variance of that. But I think the people in Oklahoma, want to make sure that we're running efficient government. We've got core services that, we've got to fund, but I think there's the will of the legislature to, see the income tax come down.
Representative Steele.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I believe the question is, do I believe that Oklahoma should significantly reduce or eliminate our personal income tax? The short answer is yes, I do. I believe that we should take a methodical, logical approach, a systematic approach. I think that we can do it in such a way that we don't have to jeopardize funding for core services of government. The reality is, and you made reference to this, Brad, in your introduction, that some really positive things are happening in Oklahoma from a job creation standpoint. And I know that everyone in this room is pro-growth, and you all are responsible, have contributed to Oklahoma's success. Last year, we added 38,400 jobs to our state's economy. 38,400 jobs. We've been identified by at least 2 national magazines as being the 11th best state in the nation to do business. I'm confident that we're going to crack the top 10 in the next 2 years. I think that we need to capitalize on the momentum that we have. We need to capitalize on the good things that are happening right now. And I think that with a systematic approach and a review of our tax credits and our tax code, we can begin to free up some money that would allow us to then reduce our personal income tax, and I do think it's the right direction to move.
Okay. Representative Inman.
Thanks for the question, and on behalf of the House Democratic Caucus, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. I enjoy getting a chance to stand up and sort of give our perspective on where we think the state of Oklahoma ought to go. Things are going well in the state, but if anybody believes that there's not work left to be done, I'd like to sit down and visit with you. We want to be business friendly in this state. We want to grow the economy. Does anybody in this room believe that growing the economy and being business friendly doesn't include investing in education, investing in transportation, investing in public safety? You have to. A state or a city or a community that doesn't invest in those core services cannot survive. No business wants to come to a state in which the roads and bridges have potholes on them. It's the reason we had to invest in I-40 in the new crosstown. No business wants to come to a state where the children of their employees can't get a good public education and the universities can't produce high quality, well-educated students. No business wants to do that. No business wants to come to a state where there aren't the public services available to take care of the needs of the state. Does anyone in the room think that teachers get paid too much in Oklahoma? Does anyone in the room think that we've got enough money already spent to fund roads and bridges in Oklahoma? Anybody? For the last 3 years, we've seen the state budget cut for most of those core services 20%. 1 out of every $5 out of those core services have been removed. If I went to you and your business and said, give me 1 out of every 5 of your dollars, but make it work anyway. And oh, by the way, now what we're going to do is, since that's worked so well for you, we're going to go ahead and take 1/3 of your dollars. 1/3, $2 billion is what eliminating the state income tax would cost the state. We're going to take 1/3 of your dollars now and just eliminate those as well, and everything's going to be great. Does anybody believe that's a smart approach? It's not. And those folks who've come out and said, well, if we just cut the taxes, that it'll all just take care of itself, I don't see how that happens. There's no tax ferry. When we compare ourselves to states like Texas, they have a state property tax. A state property tax. We don't have a state property tax. Do the folks who push eliminating the state income tax want to establish a state property tax? Because the people in Del City are sick and tired of property tax increases. They don't want to see a state property tax double or triple their property taxes as they are in the state of Texas. If under the current plan that's been proposed, do you understand under the current plan that's been proposed, families that make $40,000 a year, families of 4 that make $40,000 a year, most of my constituents would see a $615 tax increase under this plan. under this plan, a $615 tax increase. So we won't invest in services, won't invest in roads and bridges, won't invest in education, and will raise taxes on the poorest people in the state of Oklahoma. I can tell you now, the 31 members of the House Democratic Caucus will stand opposed to that each and every day. It's not a progressive plan to grow the state of Oklahoma. And until we see one, we're going to oppose it.
Thank you. Senator Burrage.
Did Representative Inman use up all my time?
That's pretty good.
Elimination of the state income tax, I think it's important at this session that we move away from speaking in platitudes, which many people have done for years about the elimination of the state income tax. And I think we're moving forward. We've seen some plans come forward. We had a plan that came out of the Senate, or a Senate-run committee, that talked about taking it from 5.25 to 4.75, and also talked about taking away tax credits from the blind, disabled, and the seniors. So when you talk about elimination of state income tax, if you want to get the money back, if you want to leave the state budget revenue neutral, it's going to take some really tough decisions. And I think people need to understand that. State services are funded at this point at a bare minimum, in my opinion. I'm not afraid to say that. So I think we need to be very careful and very thoughtful. And yes, I would like to have no state income tax, but I also want to have a state that's got the proper infrastructure to attract business. So as we go forward, I think we should be very, very careful and thoughtful and understand it's going to cost money. Just recently, former Speaker Kris and Scott Meacham spoke to Tulsa Chamber, at a Tulsa event actually, and they said it must be revenue neutral. And I agree, and that's going to take some tough decisions.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, last year we had a total rewrite, 206 pages of the workers' comp law, which was a very significant achievement. Some have suggested that we should let the impact of those changes be assessed before we move forward on any additional reforms. Others support enacting more significant reforms in 2012. And the legislation would allow an employer to opt out of the state's workers' comp system. How do you assess the need for additional workers' comp reform? And I'll start with Representative Steele.
Thank you for the question. And I would say, and just reaffirm, maybe reiterate that we have made progress in the area of workers' compensation reform this last session, significant progress. And thanks to the leadership of Governor Fallin and others, I think that we have implemented the most comprehensive workers' compensation reform initiatives in recent history. And I'm proud of what we've done, but I still hear from our employers across the state that our workers' compensation situation is still the biggest deterrent for job growth, job creation, and job enhancement. So my personal thought is that we need to diligently monitor the reforms that have recently been implemented and still explore ways to provide additional options for employers in Oklahoma. I think that we can do both. I think that we need to be responsible with it, but I do think that we need to have some very intelligent and some very significant discussions on what we can do to provide more options to our employers in our state.
Representative Inman.
Thank you, Brad. Our caucus, the vast majority of our caucus was proud to have supported the workers' compensation legislation that came out last year. I supported it, thought it was a good move to try to improve the business environment in the state of Oklahoma, but now it's time to sit back and let it take hold. That's basically our position. We need to wait, and all too often we pass things, and then because somebody needs to run on a platform, it's an election year, we've got to introduce another workers' comp bill so that I can go back out there and tell folks I'm fighting for them. That just complicates matters. We want to wait and see how these reforms, and when they were billed, I can go pull you the debates and pull you the press releases. The legislation that came through last year was supposed to be the end-all, be-all. It's the best thing that's ever happened. If that's true, well, let's let it take effect. Let's let it set in, and then we can come back in a few years and tweak it. That's what we want to do. In terms of allowing for an opt-out provision, we're hesitant to support something like that. The last thing we want to do is drive up workers' compensation insurance rates for all of your employers who can't opt out. And then we think if you take a group of folks and pull them out of the pool, that's exactly what will happen. And so we're cautious and want to take some time before we come out and fully commit or oppose that particular provision.
Senator Burrage.
Last year we had a debate about workers' compensation, had a bill, I supported the bill. The bill could have been better. As it turns out, people talked about greedy attorneys and claimants through the years. We started digging into the system. A lot of people are making money off the system, and particularly doctors and specialty hospitals. They're making a multiple of what they can make through other insurance claims, and that got in the way, in my opinion, of real reform and real cost savings to business. So I'm always open for discussion about more workers' compensation reform. It is the number one issue I hear from small businesses in my district. So while we did make great gains, I think we could always look to do more and keeping the cost down and looking where the costs really come from and who's really making millions of dollars off the system.
Senator Bingman?
Thank you for the question. I agree. I think the number one issue in the state of Oklahoma still for businesses is the workers' comp rates that they pay. We're not competitive yet with the surrounding states. We're making progress, and it's probably the biggest deterrent of companies looking to move to Oklahoma when they start looking at the workers' comp rates, factoring that in, the cost of doing business. We need to do more. So we did a lot last year, and we're going to still see more benefits from the reforms that we did last year, but I think it's important the message that we send is that we're not going to stop there, and we're going to do things to keep working to bring the workers' comp rates down. We're looking at, funding more the AG's office for, looking at abuse in the system, things like that. And, of course, the opt-out. We certainly don't want to put any burden on small businesses, and I'm being told on the opt-out that it will not affect the rates of the small businesses. So want to make sure that 90% of the businesses in Oklahoma are small business. So we want to do everything we can to protect them and still strive to do what we can to make this an attractive place to do business.
Thank you. At the crossroads of I-40 and I-35 stands the unfinished American Indian Cultural Center and Museum. This has been an emotional issue and much discussed. Do you believe that the state should help fund the completion of the American Indian Cultural Center and Museum? And we'll start with Representative Inman.
It's not a position that I like. The fact I don't like the fact that Oklahoma's in the position to have to deal with this issue now. I wish it would have been taken care of several years back. However, it's not. It's on our plate now. We've got to address it. We've spent millions of dollars. The tribes have spent money. We've spent money. It needs to be completed. It'll be an incredible asset for Oklahoma City and for the state of Oklahoma. It's got to be done. We've made commitments. We need to live up to those commitments and work together to make sure that the cultural center is completed and completed as soon as possible. If we do nothing, which is where we've been for the last year or so, it will cost us, nevertheless, it will cost us hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to mothball the place, and we will have received no benefit from it at all. And so we've started it. Let's get it finished.
Senator Burrage.
I agree with Representative Inman. It's a state obligation. It's a project we started. It's a project we need to complete. The tribes have stepped up to the plate in the last year or two. They're going to help. I think it's something we need to get done. It'll be the benefit the entire state. And once again, it's an obligation, promises we already made.
Senator Bingman.
May I yield to Senator Treat out there? I know he's out there. One of the problems we have in the state is when we go out to fund a project, we throw a little seed money out there and get something going and not knowing what the end game is. So, I think we've got $90 million invested. I don't think we have a $90 million asset out there right now. So regardless of where we go or where we are, we're on the hook right now. The state, we're paying $5 or $6 million a year in bond payments that has already been incurred. What I would like to see, and I know they're working on it now, is a business plan of what it will take to finish the project, and time forward after the project is done is how are we going to pay for it? How is it going to be funded every year? The thing's got to represent that it is a state agency, but we've got to look at it as how are we going to fund that on a yearly basis, and is it going to generate enough revenue to eventually pay for itself. So I think we're getting more information. We're getting some good participation in the Senate, and I think the public is now, I think Oklahoma City public or statewide is being engaged now to help come up with commitments and funds to help, close the gap what we need. I think we're looking at about $80 million is what I'm being told to finish the project. So it's a huge, huge project that we've undertaken. I don't think anyone anticipated this kind of money to be spent when the thing was initiated, but it's difficult for the legislature being put in the position when you've got something that's half finished and unfunded that, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I think seeing the private input that, that's coming in will help us in the legislature make our decision to get the thing finished.
Okay. Representative Steele.
There's no question our state has a rich Native American tradition. There's no question that our state is extremely has this extremely significant Native American history, and our tribes are very much a part of who we are in Oklahoma. I think it's an asset worth exploring. I think that in agreement with Representative Inman that we are at risk of losing our current investment if we don't complete the project. That being said, I'm not sure that now is the time to take on additional debt. We're in a very we're rebounding. Our economy is starting to show signs of improvement. And my guess is, based on the conversations that I've had with various legislators, that the current body is not interested in taking on additional state debt at this time.
Okay, thank you. The Chamber's relied on a number of state economic development incentive programs to recruit companies to Oklahoma City and provide existing companies with an incentive to grow. Many of these programs now are under immense scrutiny. Can you tell us whether you favor retaining programs such as the investment tax credit, property tax exemption for manufacturers, and the historical building rehabilitation tax credit? And we'll start with Senator Burrage.
First of all, I'd like to thank personally, on behalf of my caucus, the work of Representative David Dank.
Hear, hear.
He's just done outstanding work. I know many of y'all disagree with some of the recommendations that came forth or some of the things were discussed in his committee, but why not scrutinize these tax credits? Why not take a closer look at each one of them? And I think the work he did in the interim is outstanding. My position with regard to tax credits is we need to look at them like Representative Dank has done, his committee's done, but we need to look at each one and determine, is it truly an economic development tool? And if it is, then it should stand on its own. But if it's not, it should go away. And going back to the first discussion we had about the elimination of the state income tax, if we're ever going to drop the state income tax, we're going to have to look at some of these tax credits and determine, are they truly an economic development tool? Are they creating jobs? Are they adding value to the economy of Oklahoma? And if they are, fine, maybe they should stay. But if they're not, we do need to eliminate them. If they're something that was put in place by special interest through the years at the Capitol, then they should be gone.
Senator Bingman?
I would also concur with those comments. I think I want to applaud Senator Dank and the committee looking at the tax credits. I think that's our job in the legislature is to scrutinize every one of those and make sure that they're doing the job that they were initially intended. I think we need to be more transparent as we can with the tax credits and who's benefiting, and I think the public has a right to know. I think we'll have a very healthy discussion over everyone's going to have their favorite, and everyone may look at tax credits differently and have a different perspective on them, but they have been a vital tool in recruiting business and economic development in Oklahoma. And again, if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, we need to get rid of them. And as Senator Burrage talked about, the income tax, that's probably the one area that if we want to move forward with eliminating or reducing the income tax, it's got to come from the tax credits, the savings that we get from eliminating some of those.
Representative Steele?
Thank you. I want to say that since Chairman Dank has taken on the work of really trying to clean up the tax code. I've never heard so much screaming and yelling and cussing and finally I just told David, you can't talk that way. You can't be saying those things. That's maybe not him. Here's what I believe, and I know David Dank's heart, and I just want to echo and affirm everything that's been said about him. He's been tenacious. He has been tireless in his effort, and I want to make it crystal clear that if there is a credit on the books that truly is a benefit to the state of Oklahoma, that's doing what it was intended to do, that's accomplishing what it was created to do, if it meets the constitutional criteria that will hopefully be adopted by the legislature or reaffirmed by the legislature, it stays. It stays. We're not wanting to put Oklahoma at a disadvantage in any regard. However, we do feel like that we have a responsibility to be effective and efficient with the resources that have been entrusted to us. And the reality is that over the course of time, the legislature has enacted a number of credits that were set to expire at a date certain. Well, guess what? They're still on the books. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. I think he was onto something there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to establish objective criteria by which to measure each and every tax credit that would be in effect for the state of Oklahoma so that we can be good stewards of the resources that have been entrusted to us. If it's doing what it's intended to do, if it meets constitutional muster, it stays. At the end of the day, if it doesn't, it goes.
Representative Inman.
Thanks, Bren. Now, I thought that the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber completely endorsed David's proposal because, after all, he is a chamber member, right, David? They're with you 100%. No, our caucus is our caucus is grateful to Representative Dank for what he's done. We started this drumbeat a couple of years ago when budgets were being slashed. We had some legitimate concerns that foster kids in the DHS program were taking a 10% cut, but yet major corporations, million-dollar corporations, weren't taking any cut at all. They still got their tax credit. That was a real concern for us, and we tried to shed a light on it and said, hey, you know what, if we're going to have pain in the state, we all ought to feel the pain equally. It's difficult to say that these children should take a cut, but those of us in this room shouldn't, right? So we said that we ought to take a look at this. Well, then Representative Dank really took the bull by the horns and opened it all up. Do we agree with everything that David's come out with? I don't know that we can say that we do, but the vast majority of it, we're fully supportive of making sure that each and every tax credit, each and every dollar that's spent in the state can be tied back to true job creation. If it really does keep this economic engine moving, then there's no reason to eliminate it. We've got to stay competitive with Texas. We've got to stay competitive with other states. And if I were king for a day, I don't say that I agree with Senator Coburn all that often, but I agree with him wholeheartedly here. If I were king for a day, I'd eliminate all the incentives and say they're all gone. Nationwide, no more. Let's level the playing field by that, and everybody go out and compete. If you're a better business, you'll win, I promise you. That's how capitalism works. But unfortunately, we've got tied up into this system of we got to create a carrot to fight their carrot, to fight this carrot. And since we're in that game, what our caucus says is that carrot better create a job, or otherwise it's got to go. And so that's what's going to be our perspective this session.
Okay, thank you. In 2011, we saw 23 immigration bills that were introduced, many of which proposing very harsh, what was described as Arizona Plus type reform. And subsequent to that, of course, we've seen Alabama. They've done something similar. None of those bills were passed, were enacted last year, but there's still some that believe that type of reform is necessary for Oklahoma. Is enacting an Arizona type immigration reform in Oklahoma a priority to you? And I'll start with Senator Bingman.
I think everyone recognizes that, legal immigration, we're all for that. And I think when you start polling today, the people want to hear about jobs. They want to hear about the economy. And I don't think immigration is on the top of that list like it was maybe a couple years ago. And I think The joint legislative panel that we had last year looked at a lot of it, and immigration issues in Oklahoma probably are more geared toward public safety, drug-related, and I think that was an emphasis that we had last year. So I think other states have different issues than, what we want to do in Oklahoma is identify immigration issues that affect Oklahomans. If we have problems in Oklahoma, let's look at them, identify them, and deal with that. But let's don't get wrapped up with what's going on in other states because, their problems may not be the problems that we have in Oklahoma.
Okay. Representative Steele.
I concur with what Senator Bingman said, and I would just maybe say it a slightly different way. Whether it's immigration or any other issue, we should pass laws based on Oklahoma's needs and Oklahoma's situations, not another state's needs or another state's situation. That being said, Senator Bingman and myself, in conjunction with the leadership of Governor Fallon, have enacted a working group to study immigration-related issues, immigration-related proposals, because there are, it's a very complicated, very complex issue. There are far-reaching consequences, and we just want to make sure that anything that might be implemented in Oklahoma, we're fully considering exactly what kind of effect it would have on our state. In addition, I think it's important to note that just recently, over the interim, the courts have released the provisions of House Bill 1804. So for the first time, we're going to see the full effect of House Bill 1804. I think it's also very important that we monitor the effects of that bill as we consider or as we discuss any additional proposals to this issue. But I have confidence in our working group and the legislators that have been asked to serve in that regard and on that particular committee, that they will do their due diligence and study the issue and ultimately present a proposal, if any, that they believe is in the best interest of Oklahoma.
Representative Inman.
The illegal immigration issue is not one that's been resolved, and I'm not sure that it can be resolved at 23rd and Lincoln. The ultimate solution's got to come out of Washington. You don't handle a situation that involves Texas and Arizona and New Mexico and at the state capitol under our dome. That's not where the ultimate solution happens. And you've seen it when we passed 1804. Immigration issues would just move. The issues would pick up and go to the Texas Panhandle, they go to Kansas or wherever, and that's not a smart solution. So I guess what I'm saying is, ideally, we'd like to see the folks in Washington get their act together, but that's not happened in a few years, and I'm not confident it's going to happen anytime soon. And so because of that, we have to act. What does that mean? Is that an Arizona system or is that an Oklahoma system? What all that means, I'm not sure, but I do know that the people in my district are concerned about the situation of illegal immigration, concerned about where our tax dollars are going, how they're being spent, concerned about what having illegal immigrants in the community means, and they're going to want answers out of 23rd and Lincoln to address that. And so our caucus will look at that. We'll work with that study group. We're willing to work with the governor and legislative leaders to try to find a solution that works for Oklahoma. Instead of taking somebody else's cookie cutter approach and saying we're going to do it here the way they did it, we're not on the border like Arizona is. We've got our own separate issues, and so we're willing to take a smart, level-headed, cool-headed approach to the situation. But make no mistake about it, our caucus is focused on the issue and wants to make sure that solutions happen soon because our constituents and the people of Oklahoma that we represent demand it.
Senator Burrage.
Immigration is by and large a federal issue. Everybody knows that. The bills that we've seen introduced last year in particular, in my opinion, were grandstanding bills to get headlines in the papers, bills to draw attention to themselves, and not bills that were serious in nature or meant to have any real impact. I'm willing to look at, I voted for House Bill 1804 in 2007. Sometimes I wonder if that was a good vote or not. Not afraid to say that. But I'm hoping this year that we won't, I don't think we've seen as many filed this year as we had last year. But the ones that came through the Senate last year, many of them were just ridiculous and racist in my opinion. But if somebody's got some ideas that can really help Oklahoma and help the issue, I'm glad to look at them. But at this point, I think it's an issue that primarily needs to be addressed at the federal level.
Okay. We're going to do one more question so we can, subsequent to that, we can end up letting each one of the panelists have a 2-minute close. Our final question is, in recent years, the business community's worked to raise the K through 12 curriculum standards and implement more rigorous graduation standards. We anticipate in this session that there'll be attempts to reduce that rigor of some of the classes and allow districts to opt out of the graduation requirements. Would you oppose or support such changes? We'll start with Representative Steele.
I think this is going to be a good discussion. So I'll tell you where I'm at personally on the issue, and then we'll see kind of what happens this legislative session, because I know several of my colleagues have a different opinion. The reality is schools across our state have known for about 7 years that these standards were in place and that this day was coming, and I think we ought to stick to it. I think that we're doing a disservice to those schools and to those kids who really have gone above and beyond to meet and to step up and to achieve the level of standards that are currently in place. And so my personal opinion is that we need to stand with it and that we need to protect it, and it ought to mean something. If there are students that are lagging behind, then we ought to consider ways that we can get them caught up, or that we can help them along, or provide them some additional help to get to where they need to be. But ultimately, our goal is to produce the best educated citizenry of any state in the nation. And so I think that we need these tougher criteria, and we need to stick with them. They need to mean something if we're going to achieve that goal. That being said, several of my colleagues, who I have a great deal of respect for, see it differently. So I suspect that we'll have a very spirited and thorough discussion on this issue, and it'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of the day.
Representative Inman.
It is going to be a significant issue, although our caucus fully supports the standards, the strict standards they are. We believe we've got to have, in order to produce the best and brightest, you've got to set the bar someplace. You can't set it low. But what's happening now, and what will happen this year, is you're going to see parents, for the first time ever, going to have students who made B's and C's in their class, maybe even a few A's, but they passed 3 out of 7 exams, couldn't get to the 4th one. Well, all of a sudden now they can't graduate. And they can't graduate, that means they can't join the military, they can't go to college, there's all kinds of problems. The dropout rate in Oklahoma is already something that's got to be addressed, and that's only going to exacerbate it. At least the members of my caucus believe that. It will only exacerbate the problem. So there's legislation out there now from Representative McPeak, Representative McDaniel, to try to create an out, not to give them a diploma, not to say, well, you didn't meet the standards, you get a diploma, nevertheless, you go on your way. That's not what we want to do, but it would, under their provision, would give them basically a certificate of completion. Would say that if you want to go through the remediation and get that high school diploma, there's a system to do that, and there's a system already built into the program now. But if you don't want to do that, we don't want you just simply dropping out and not being able to go join the military, not being able to do other things. And so this certificate of completion, if they met other standards, would allow them to move on with their lives if that's what they want to do. And that may be the humane way to solve the problem. Whether that's going to be the ultimate solution or not, I don't know, but I know that we are definitely looking at it, because we don't want to turn around and increase our dropout rate and cause problems like that.
Thank you. Senator Burrage.
Thank you. Superintendent Breezy, you're in for another fun spring. No, I appreciate the work she's done, and I think accountability is key. For far too long, we've not had accountability in our schools. That being said, I think we need to be very careful as to how we treat these students that, as Representative Inman said, may be BC students that can't pass the test. And do we give them the scarlet letter forever, that they couldn't get out of high school? And how does that impact the way they feel about themselves? How does that impact their employability later on? So I look forward to the debate and the options set forth. I think just yesterday I saw that Senator Coates introduced a bill to use the ACT. If they make a certain grade in the ACT, that would count. I haven't given that much thought, but you're going to see a lot of ideas like that come forward, and I look forward to it.
Senator Bingman.
Again, we set the bar high, and I think we did that for a reason. I think we all knew full well what was going to happen, and you're going to have parents calling the schools, and I think that's going to be a good thing. We need parents to be more engaged, so this is not time for us to be backing down and say, oh, well, we're not going to make it, let's give them a pass. We've set the bar. We want to elevate our education, our educated workforce in Oklahoma, and we need to move forward and don't stop now. And I think this is going to create some very good debate, and look forward, when parents get involved with their children's education, good things will happen. We're innovative, and we'll think of ways to get around this and improve it and make it better. So I think that's a good sign for Oklahoma.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll give each one of the panelists a 2-minute chance to wrap up, and I'll begin with Representative Inman.
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I've enjoyed it. I hope we've been able to articulate our position as well as possible. We look forward to working with each of you this coming legislative session. I said this last year, and it was true then. It's still true now. My door's always open, and the great thing about that is, being in the minority, I have a lot more time than this man has. So if you want to come and complain or gripe about something, I'm all ears. Why not? Because I'm probably up there griping and complaining about the same thing. So, but please feel free to come and visit with us. This session is going to be very, very important. It's an election year, and because election year politics, in my opinion, don't make for good politics and don't make for good policies, there's a potential to have knee-jerk reactions to real significant issues in the state of Oklahoma. It takes level-headed business folks and citizens in the community to walk into that building and say, I realize you may have an opponent on the ballot, but that doesn't give you the license to go do this ridiculous Plan A or Plan B. You need to help us, because we can stand up, the speaker can within his caucus, and my minority caucus can stand up and try to make that case, but oftentimes they won't listen. It takes folks like you to help make that case. So whether it's eviscerating the tax base or whether it's doing other things in the state that may not be good for your business, may not be good for our children, may not be good for the future of Oklahoma, I ask that you join together with us and look beyond party and simply look at the policies and say, is it the right approach or the wrong approach? I don't care what letter's behind it, who authored the bill. Is it the right approach or the wrong approach? And then join together with us, because although we're only 31, there's all kinds of fractures out there. In his caucus and the Senate caucuses, there's fractures and groups break off all the time. With our efforts, we helped to pass a variety of measures last year that without us would not have been passed. We want to do that and play that role again for you, so please feel free to come and talk, because our members want to work and improve the state of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Senator Burrage.
Thank you for letting me be here today. And you always learn something when you come to something like this. And I learned today that Kris Steele went to Broken Bow High School.
Yes, sir.
And I went to Antlers, so Little Dixie's well represented here on the on the stage here. For all you guys who look down on southeast Oklahoma, here we are.
That's great.
In 2008, I voted 1,309 times on the Senate floor. And I got significant correspondence, meaning more than 2 or 3 phone calls or letters on less than 10 bills. Now, I got lots of visits from lobbyists and special interest groups, but people in my district, less than 10 bills. That being said, you all have power, those of you who aren't elected, and that is to communicate with your legislators and let them know how you feel about bills. It means much more to hear from somebody in the business community, somebody that's your constituent, than it does the people you see every day. So I encourage everybody to stay very involved and to realize what's going on at the state capitol, because you do have an impact. I'm looking forward to the session. It's going to be an interesting session. We've got early filing this year, April filing, which will, I think, change the culture of the session somewhat, because people have opponents the last 2 months of the session. Some people will be looking at primaries in June, and so I'm fearful that could cause a little bit of a silly season at some point, but I'm hopeful that we can keep our heads on straight, get a state budget finished, and make the policy changes that we need to.
Senator Bingman.
Thank you. It's been a very good morning, and we look forward to a very good session coming up. Just want to say it's a great time to be in Oklahoma. If you travel outside the state right now, people are asking questions about Oklahoma. I think we're on a lot of people's radar map. I think the reason is because of a lot of the good policy decisions we've made over the last couple of years. Certainly, the decisions that we make comes from you all and the input that you give to us and help us in the decisions that we make. So we've got a great head coach in Governor Fallon, And I guess we can call Lieutenant Governor Lamb the quarterback, as they're outside the state promoting Oklahoma, and I think we're giving them some good tools to use to recruit businesses to come to Oklahoma. So we've got a lot to look forward to. We've got a lot to work on also at the same time. So I look forward to the challenges ahead of us.
Representative Steele.
I'm still trying to figure out what eviscerate means. I don't know. Use those kind of words up here.
Southeastern Oklahoma, is that what it is?
So here's what I want to say. When I travel the state, and I mean this with all my heart, I truly feel like I'm probably the most fortunate person in all of Oklahoma. And it has everything to do with the people I get to work with, those here on the stage, but it's also people like Randy McDaniel, who's leading the charge on pension reform. And thanks to his effort, we were able to reduce our unfunded liability within our pension systems by $5 billion last year. That's huge. Thank you, Randy. I think it's also because of people like David Dink and his leadership on our tax code and cleaning up our tax code. It's people like Jason Nelson, who I know is here in the audience today, and his leadership on reforming the Department of Human Services. It's also people like Guy Lieben and his leadership on transportation issues, and Elise Hall and the rest of my colleagues who are here today. They're just absolutely phenomenal people. I think the best and the brightest within the entire state, and I feel privileged to get to work with them. But it's also because of all of you. It's everyone in this room. I truly believe that by working together, we can truly make a difference. I also believe that in Oklahoma, our best days are yet to come. So I just want to say thank you again for allowing us to be here this morning, and go Thunder.
All right, and just finishing up, I think, today you've seen, whereas there may be differences of opinion, these people are passionate about what they do, and they want to carry on the momentum that the state has, as well as the community. So again, let's give them a big round of applause. And we'd also like to thank our sponsors again. Last year was a great session. This one, a lot of things, a lot of priorities, a lot of things to discuss, and this can be equally as good. We want to say to the legislators that please use this room as a resource, not only the chamber, but the businesses that are in here. This is something that just continues to grow. There's a wealth of information here, and we want to hear from you. And to the members that are here in attendance, we want to remind you to be involved. It is important. I mean, a lot of it's numbers and hearing the opinions and those kind of things. During the legislative session, you can end up going to the chamber website, and there is a weekly email update that you can find. But if there's an issue that concerns you, please use that legislative guide and make contact. There has to be input. We are your advocates for the Capitol, and we've got to be effective, and we've got to have the knowledge of what people do want and stuff. So, again, we appreciate everybody being here today, and we can't let down the momentum and the things that are happening here. People are noticing outside this state, and that needs to continue. So, thank you to all of you, and be safe. Thanks.